The Theron system burned red with fire. The invasion fleet had been attacking the planet for 3 days without stopping. The Therons were a peaceful species. They had built cities and art and music. They had not built weapons. They had not prepared for war. Now their cities were burning, and their people were dying. Commander Kalos of the Theron military watched from his command ship as more fires spread across the continents below. He had only 30 ships, and they were no match for the 200 Krell vessels that surrounded them. He knew what was going to happen. The Krell would destroy his entire fleet within hours. Then they would land on the planet and take everything. Kalos wondered if he should just give up now. It would save lives. Maybe the Krell would be satisfied with taking the resources and leaving. Maybe they would not kill everyone. But he knew better. He had studied the Krell. They took what they wanted and destroyed what they left behind. Surrender would not save anyone. Then something happened that Kalos did not expect. A new group of ships appeared on his screens. 40 small vessels jumping out of hyperspace. They moved fast and with purpose. They had human markings on their sides. Kalos had read about humans in the old history books. They were extinct, the records said. But here they were, real and alive and moving to intercept the Krell fleet. Kalos opened a communication channel and spoke to the nearest human ship. "This is Commander Kalos of the Theron Defense Fleet," he said. "We did not call for help." "We do not know who you are," a human voice answered. It was clear and strong. "I am Captain Daniel Hayes of the Sanctuary Defense Force. We received your distress signal. We are here to help." Kalos was too surprised to speak for a moment. He had thought his people would die alone, that no one would come. But these humans, these creatures from the dead past, had come anyway. "Your help is welcome," Kalos said. "But I must tell you, there are 200 Krell ships. Your fleet is small. We cannot win this battle." "We will try," Hayes said. The human fleet moved into position. They did not spread out like most fleets would. Instead, they grouped themselves around the Theron ships, protecting them. The Krell commander, a giant creature called Vorg, looked at this strange new force and decided to attack immediately. The battle began with a storm of weapons fire. Laser beams and plasma bolts crossed the void of space. The first human ship, a destroyer named the Chicago, took hits on its right side. The ship's hull was strong. It did not break. It did not explode. It kept fighting. The human fighter pilots climbed into their small ships and launched from the larger vessels. They rose to meet the Krell bombers in the thin air above the Theron world. Down there, the humans would have an advantage. They came from a world that was harsh. They had learned to fly in storms in extreme weather. They had learned to fight in difficult conditions. The Krell had always fought in the stable environment of space. They did not know how to adapt. A human pilot named Kevin Chun pushed his fighter to the edge of its power. A Krell bomber was on his tail, firing laser bolts. The bolts missed by meters. Kevin dove down toward the planet's surface, flying between mountains, flying low enough to feel the heat from his engines. The Krell bomber tried to follow but was not skilled enough. It crashed into a mountainside. Kevin pulled his fighter up and away, already looking for the next enemy. In space, Captain Marcus Stone commanded the larger battle from the main ship. He watched the positions of every ship on his screens. He saw the Krell fleet trying to push through the human defenses. He saw the openings in their formation. He saw the places where they were weak. "Move the cruisers forward," he commanded. "Get them between the Krell destroyers and the Theron cities. Do not let them get close to the planet." The human ships moved like they were dancing, flowing around the Krell forces, blocking them at every turn. The Krell ships were larger and had more weapons, but the humans were faster and smarter. They used the gravity of the Theron world and the asteroid field nearby as shields. They flew patterns that confused the Krell sensors. Emma Hayes sat in the communication station and watched it all happen. She saw her father's ship in the center of the battle. She saw the danger he was in. She wanted to tell him to retreat, to save himself, but she did not. That was not the job of a communications officer. Her job was to relay information and to be strong. When a Krell cruiser broke through the human line and moved toward the planet, Emma saw it on her screens. She sent a signal to Captain Walker's ship, the Atlantic. Enemy cruiser coming in hot from the north side. Can you intercept? Walker's voice came back immediately. We are moving to intercept. Good spotting, Emma. The Atlantic moved fast, using all of its power. It positioned itself between the Krell cruiser and the cities below. The Krell ship fired. The Atlantic shields flared bright orange as the weapon's fire hit them. But the ship held. The shields held. The Atlantic returned fire, and the Krell cruiser had to change course. Hours passed. The Krell fleet attacked again and again. Each time, the humans blocked them. Each time, the Therans lived a little bit longer. The battle began to turn. The Krell had numbers, but the humans had something better. They had purpose. They had each other. They had learned 500 years ago that working together meant surviving together. Finally, Hayes made a decision. He could not win by defending. He had to attack. He climbed into a small fighter ship. His hand shook a little as he fastened the safety straps, but not from fear. They shook from the knowledge that this moment mattered. This moment would decide whether the Therans lived or died. He launched his fighter and flew toward the Krell command ship. Laser fire lit up the space around him. Missiles came at him from 3 directions. He twisted his ship, moving through the fire like someone dancing through rain. He reached the command ship's reactor core. He armed the fusion charge he carried. His hands moved with precision. He thought of Emma. He thought of Sanctuary. He thought of all the people who had believed that humanity could still do good in the galaxy. Hayes pressed the button that armed the charge. He fired his engines and pulled away from the command ship. Behind him, the fusion charge detonated. The core of the ship exploded in a ball of white fire. The command ship broke apart, pieces flying in all directions. The Krell fleet was suddenly without a leader. The ships that had been fighting together began to scatter. Some retreated. Some continued fighting without direction. In that moment of confusion, the humans and Therans pushed forward. They drove the Krell back. They won the sky above the Theran world. Hayes felt something hit his fighter. An alarm screamed in his ears. His ship was damaged. He could not fly it much longer. He steered toward open space, away from the cities, and ejected. His seat rocket fired, pushing him into space in an emergency pod. He was alive. The battle was ending. The Krell were retreating. And humanity, hidden for 500 years, had stood up and fought. They had won. The great chamber of the Void Council hung in the darkness of space, a structure so massive that it took 10 minutes to cross from one end to the other. The walls were made of steel gray metal that reflected the light of distant stars. Inside, 7 alien species sat around a circular table, each one different from the others. Their forms ranged from tall and thin to short and wide, their skin colors from blue to green to purple. They had gathered here to discuss something that had troubled them for 500 years. Commander Vex of the Krell species stood up. He was tall, with gray skin and 4 arms. His eyes were black and empty like the void of space itself. The other leaders turned to look at him. Vex held in his hand a small device that glowed with blue light. On it were written words in the universal language that all the alien species could read. This is the last record we have of the humans, Vex said, his voice hard and cold. 500 years ago, this species existed. They were scattered across 50 star systems. They built ships. They traveled between worlds. But then something happened. Everything went silent. All their colonies stopped sending signals. All their cities went dark. The great silence began, and it never ended. The other leaders leaned forward. They all knew this history, but hearing it again made them feel the weight of it. The Therians, who had soft blue skin and long fingers, looked troubled. The Xylorians, who were smaller and moved with quick nervous movements, clicked their teeth together. The ancient Vosian, who was older than the others by hundreds of years, simply closed his eyes. What killed them? Asked Lyra, the leader of the Therans. She spoke with a voice like wind through trees. Was it disease? Was it war among themselves? Vex shook his head. We do not know. But it does not matter. What matters is this. The humans are gone. They are extinct. Whatever they were, they could not survive in this galaxy. We should close this file and never think of them again. The Vosian opened his eyes. He had seen many things in his long life, many species rise and fall. I remember the humans, he said quietly. They were young as a species. They were violent. They fought among themselves constantly. But they were also brave. Foolishly brave. They would walk into danger with nothing but hope in their hearts. Perhaps that is what killed them. Perhaps they walked into danger one too many times. It does not matter what killed them, Vex said again. They are gone. Let us vote on closing the human file. Let us declare them extinct and move on to other concerns. The galaxy is vast, and there are living species that need our attention now. The council voted. One by one, each leader raised their hand. The humans were declared extinct. The file was closed. The Void Council would think of humanity no more. Far away from this great chamber, on a world that no star chart showed and no spy had ever found. Humanity was very much alive. The world was called Sanctuary. It was green and blue, with vast oceans and tall mountains. There were cities built of white stone that caught the light of the sun and threw it back into the sky. There were farms and forests. There were families. There were children who had never seen Earth, whose ancestors had fled to this hidden world 500 years ago when the Great War threatened to destroy all human life. Captain Daniel Hayes sat in his command center and watched the stars through a window made of clear glass. He was 50 years old. His hair was gray at the edges. His eyes were sharp and blue. He wore the uniform of the Sanctuary Defense Force, a military that had not fought a real war in 500 years. There had been no wars because there were no enemies. There was no one to fight. Hayes thought about this often. He wondered what it meant to be a soldier in a time of perfect peace. What good was a warrior when there was nothing to war against? What good was a protector when there was nothing to protect people from? The door to his office opened. His daughter, Emma, walked in. She was 25 years old. She had the same sharp eyes as her father and the same determined look on her face. Emma was a lieutenant in the Defense Force. She worked in the communications division, listening to the signals that came from the distant stars. "Father, I found something," she said. She did not sit down. She stood in front of his desk with her hands folded tightly together. "I was monitoring the deep space signals, the ones we are not supposed to listen to, the ones that come from the outer galaxies." Hayes looked up from his desk. "Emma, you know that monitoring those signals is against orders." "I do not care about orders," she said. "You taught me that some things are more important than following rules. You taught me that truth matters more than comfort. Listen to what I found." She played a sound from her device. It was a signal, a pattern of beeps and waves that translated into words. The words spoke of invasion. The words spoke of ships moving through space. The words spoke of death. Hayes listened. When the signal ended, he was quiet for a long moment. Then he looked at his daughter's face. He saw fear there, but he also saw something else. He saw determination. He saw the look of someone who knows that things cannot stay the way they are. What world is this signal coming from? He asked. The Theron system, Emma said. There are people there, Father. Millions of them. And someone is attacking them. Someone with weapons and ships and no mercy. They are going to die if no one helps them. Hayes stood up. He walked to the window and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, beyond the safety of Sanctuary, people were dying. Somewhere out there, the galaxy was burning. And humanity, hidden in its secret world, knew nothing about it. Or did know and did nothing. He thought about what the ancient Vosian had said. The humans were foolishly brave. Perhaps that was why they had survived 500 years in secret. They had learned to be patient. They had learned to hide. But perhaps, Hayes thought, humanity had not learned to be wise. Perhaps wisdom meant knowing when to step out of the darkness and into the fight. Hayes turned back to his daughter. Show me everything you know, he said, and then we will talk to the council. The council chamber of Sanctuary was a large room cut into the stone of the mountains. 40 leaders sat around a long table, representatives from each human city and settlement. They had governed together for 500 years, making decisions by voting, by discussing, by trying to reach agreement. They had never had to make a decision like this one. Captain Daniel Hayes stood before them with his daughter Emma at his side. He held the signal that Emma had captured. He explained what it meant. He told them about the Theron system, about the invasion, about the millions of people who would die. We have a choice, Hayes said. His voice was steady. We can stay hidden. We can remain safe. We can pretend we did not hear this signal. No one would know. No one would blame us. We could live our lives here on Sanctuary, protected and comfortable. But those people in the Theron system will die. The room was silent. No one spoke. No one moved. Then an old woman named Margaret spoke. She had been alive for 80 years and had spent her entire life on Sanctuary. We came here to be safe, she said. Our ancestors came here to escape war and death. They built this world so that we would never have to fight again. If we go out there and fight, we betray everything they built. No, Hayes said quietly. If we stay hidden while innocents die, we betray what they believed in. Our ancestors did not hide because they were afraid of fighting. They hid because they wanted to protect human life. But what does it mean to protect human life if we watch other life forms die when we could have saved them? Another man stood up. His name was Robert Jackson. He was young, maybe 30 years old, and he worked in the farming division. I have children, he said. 3 children. If we fight, I might not come back to them. I might die out there in space. Is it right to risk my life for strangers? Emma spoke then. She had not planned to speak, but the words came out. My father taught me that soldiers exist to protect people, not just people we know, not just people like us. All people. If soldiers only fight when it is easy and safe, then what are they for? What are they protecting? The debate went on for hours. Some argued for staying hidden. Others argued for helping the Therons. The room divided between fear and hope, between safety and duty. Hayes sat quietly and let them speak. He would not force this decision on his people. He would not lead them to war without their agreement. Finally, the vote came. Each leader voted by raising their hand. The vote was close, very close. 32 voted to help the Therons. 8 voted to stay hidden. 40 leaders had gathered in that room, and 1 did not vote at all. That leader was Margaret, the old woman. She sat with her hands folded and said nothing. When all the votes were counted, Hayes looked at Margaret. You did not vote, he said. Margaret stood up slowly. She was very old, and her body moved with difficulty. I did not vote, she said, because I have been thinking about my great-great-grandfather. He was on Earth in the old days. He fought in wars. He saw terrible things. He survived, and he came to Sanctuary to build something better. For a long time, I thought he was wrong to fight at all. I thought the answer was to hide from violence forever. She paused. She looked at the faces of the other leaders in the room. But I was wrong, she said. Violence is real. It exists in the galaxy. We cannot hide from it. We can only choose what we do about it. If we hide while others suffer, we become the kind of people I do not want to be. So I will vote yes. We will help the Therans. And I will not run away from what that means. Margaret sat down. The vote was now 33 in favor. The decision was made. Humanity would go to war for the first time in 500 years. Captain Marcus Stone received his orders 3 days later. He was the military commander of all human forces. He had trained soldiers and studied strategy his entire life, but he had never actually fought a real war. Now he had to plan one. Stone worked in a small office with maps of the galaxy projected on the walls. Emma worked beside him. She studied the signals she had captured, analyzing the strength of the invasion fleet. She looked at the patterns of their attacks, trying to understand how they fought. They are organized, Emma said, pointing at the signals. They attack in waves. They use the same tactics again and again. They are strong, but they are predictable. Stone nodded. That is good. It means we can prepare. If they are predictable, we can surprise them. He began to plan. He had 40 ships in Sanctuary's defense fleet. They were old, but they were well built. He had 2,000 soldiers, trained and ready. It was not much compared to the invasion force, but it was something. It was a chance. Captain Lisa Walker managed the military supplies. She oversaw the weapons, the fuel, the medical supplies, everything the fleet would need. She worked long hours, checking and rechecking everything. She made lists of what they had and what they needed. She pushed her workers hard, but she never asked them to work harder than she worked herself. When everything was ready, Hayes made an announcement. He stood in the main square of the largest city and spoke to all the people. He told them that humanity would fight. He told them that soldiers would leave Sanctuary. He told them that some might not come back. We do this because it is right, he said. Not because it is easy. Not because we are certain we will win. We do this because people need us and we are strong enough to help them. We do this because we are human. And humans do not hide from suffering when we can end it. 2,000 soldiers lined up to board the ships. Some had families. Some had children. They said goodbye to people they loved, knowing they might never see them again. But they boarded the ships anyway. The fleet prepared for launch. The ships were fueled. The weapons were loaded. Emma sat at the communication station and checked all the systems. Everything was ready. Captain Hayes stood on the bridge of the main ship and looked at his crew. He looked at Emma. He looked at the stars ahead. We are going into darkness, he said to his crew. But we are not going alone. And we are not going for ourselves. Take that with you when we leave Sanctuary. Remember that you are fighting for people who cannot fight for themselves. The engines fired. The ships lifted off from the world they had called home for 500 years. They jumped into hyperspace. And humanity, hidden no longer, traveled toward a war that would change everything. The medical bay of the human fleet ship was full of wounded. There were 47 dead. There were hundreds more who would not walk again, who would not see again, who would struggle with what they had seen and what they had done. This was the price of stepping out of hiding. This was the cost of choosing the fight. Emma moved between the beds, checking on soldiers, making sure they had what they needed. Some of them knew her father. Some of them had served under her. She looked at each face and tried to be strong. She tried to smile and be encouraging, But inside, she was breaking. Captain Daniel Hayes was in a special room in the medical bay, healing in suspension. A special chamber filled with medical gel kept him alive and helped his body repair the damage. The Krell ship had hit him hard when he ejected. He had broken bones and burned skin and damage to his insides that the doctor said was very serious. They were not sure he would wake up. Emma sat outside his chamber for hours. She did not sleep. She did not eat. She just sat there and watched her father's face through the clear glass, waiting for him to open his eyes. The battle above the Theron world continued for another full cycle. The Krell fleet finally understood that they were beaten. They made one last attempt to break through the human line, a desperate attack with everything they had left. The humans and Therans stopped them. Then the Krell ships jumped away into hyperspace. They were gone. The ships that remained in the sky were damaged and tired. 15 human ships had been destroyed. Thousands of Krell soldiers had been killed. The Theron world had taken heavy damage, but it was alive. It was saved. Commander Kalos sent a message to Captain Marcus Stone. "You have saved our world," he said. "We do not know how to thank you. We do not know who you are or where you came from, but you have given us life when we had nothing but death ahead." Stone answered from the bridge of his ship. He was exhausted. He had been awake for more than 30 hours. "We are human," he said simply. "We came because people needed us. That is enough?" But it was not enough, Kalos knew. There was much more to discuss. These humans had revealed themselves to the galaxy. They had fought the Krell. They had shown abilities that none of the Council species had expected. The galaxy would never be the same. News of the battle spread quickly. Messages traveled between worlds. The Void Council heard what had happened. The Krell commander's report reached them first, and it was filled with anger and humiliation. Then reports came from the Therans, telling of the humans who had appeared from nowhere and saved them. The council called an emergency session. The 7 leaders gathered in their great chamber. They were confused and angry and afraid. A new species had appeared. A species that was supposed to be extinct. A species that had defeated the Krell. "Who are they?" demanded Lyra of the Therans. "Where did they come from?" asked another council member. The Vosian was silent. He was the oldest among them, and he remembered the humans from the old days. He said nothing, but in his ancient eyes was something that looked like recognition. Something that looked like understanding. Back in the Theron system, the human fleet began its repair and resupply operations. Captain Lisa Walker worked with Theron engineers to assess the damage and plan the repairs. She found that human ships had advantages that impressed the Therans. The hull material was stronger than they had expected. The engines could take more power. The weapon systems were more flexible. "How is this possible?" asked a Theron engineer named Cass. "Your ships are smaller than ours. They should not be so strong," Walker explained. "We come from a harsh world. Earth had severe weather and many dangers. We learned to build things that could survive. Everything we make is built for difficulty and survival. That has not changed, even after 500 years in hiding." Marcus Stone met with Commander Kalos to plan the next phase. The Krell would return, they both knew. They would gather more ships and try again. But now, the Therans would have time to prepare. Now they would have allies. "Will you stay?" Kalos asked. "Will you remain to defend us?" Stone shook his head. "We cannot stay here forever. We have our own world to consider. But we can help you build defenses. We can teach your military what we know about fighting. We can establish a permanent station here to monitor for danger. You will not be alone again." Hayes woke 3 cycles later. He opened his eyes and saw Emma sitting beside him. She had fallen asleep in the chair, her head tilted back, Tears dried on her cheeks. Hayes tried to move his hand, and pain shot through his entire body. But he could move it. He could feel it. He was alive. He reached over and touched Emma's face gently. She woke with a start, and when she saw that her father was awake, she broke down. She cried with relief and fear, and all the emotion she had been holding inside for days. Hayes held her hand, could not embrace her because his body was too damaged, but held her hand and let her cry. When Emma could speak, she told him everything. She told him about the battle, about the victory, about the 47 soldiers who had died. She told him about the wounded and the damaged ships. She told him about the joy of the Therans and the confusion of the galaxy. "We did it," Hayes said quietly. "We stepped out into the light. We showed them what we are. Is it worth it?" Emma asked. "Was it worth the price?" Hayes looked at his daughter. He thought about the Therans, their cities still standing, their people still alive. He thought about his soldiers, the ones who had died so that strangers could live. He thought about what it meant to be human, to care about beings you had never met, to risk everything for people you did not know. "Yes," he said, "it was worth the price. A price paid for something good is worth paying. That is what makes us human." Emma squeezed his hand. Outside, the human fleet continued its work, repairing damage, preparing for what would come next. The galaxy had learned that humanity was not extinct. Humanity was awake, and they were watching. The Theran capital city spread across a vast plain, with buildings made of white stone and tall towers that touched the clouds. Emma walked through the streets with Captain Marcus Stone, seeing the city come back to life after the war. The fires had been put out. The people had come out of their hiding places. They were starting to rebuild. Thousands of Therans lined the streets as the human delegation passed. They called out words of thanks in their own language and in the universal speech. Some reached out to touch the humans as they walked, as if to prove that they were real, that these saviors truly existed. Commander Kylos greeted the delegation in the great hall of the capital. The hall was huge, with a roof so high that it seemed to touch the sky. Kylos stood on a raised platform with two things in his hands. One was a medal made of gold and crystal. The other was a document of official alliance. "We have gathered here," Kylos said in a voice that echoed through the hall, "to honor those who saved our world. The humans came from beyond the stars when we had nothing but darkness ahead. They fought our enemies. They shed blood for our people. They proved that there is still hope in this galaxy." Kylos called Emma forward. She walked up to the platform, unsure what was happening. Kylos placed the medal around her neck. It was heavy and beautiful. The Therans cheered so loudly that the sound hurt her ears. "This is the Theran Medal of Valor," Kylos said. "It has been given only 3 times in our history, to warriors and heroes of the greatest strength. You receive it not for yourself, but for all humans. You receive it because your people chose to care about ours." Emma looked out at the thousands of Theran faces looking at her. She thought of her father, recovering in the medical bay. She thought of the soldiers who had died. She thought of Captain Walker and her crew, still working to repair the damaged ships. She thought of Marcus Stone, who had fought with intelligence and courage. "I accept this from my people," Emma said. "We came here because it was right. We will stay as your allies because it is right. We believe that all beings with hearts deserve to live and be free. That is what it means to be human." The Therans cheered again. They danced and sang. The celebration lasted all through the night, but in the distance, the Void Council was not celebrating. They were gathering an urgent session, troubled by what had happened in the Theran system. The 7 leaders sat in their great chamber, and they were afraid. "An unknown species has appeared," said Lyra. "They defeated the Krell, who are one of the strongest military powers in the galaxy. What do we know about them? What are their intentions?" The Vosian, the oldest leader, finally spoke. His voice was quiet, but every leader listened. "These are the humans," he said. "I told you about them 500 years ago. I remember them from the old days. They were a young species, filled with passion and courage. I thought they had died, but it appears they have been hiding. They have been waiting." "Waiting for what?" asked another council member. "Waiting," said the Vosian, "until there was a reason to fight. Humans are not violent for the sake of being violent. They fight when the fighting matters. They fight to protect others. That is a dangerous kind of power. That is the most dangerous kind of enemy." A message came to the chamber. An urgent transmission from the Thurin system. Commander Callas was requesting an audience with the council. He wanted to bring representatives of the human species. He wanted to introduce them formally. The council debated whether to accept. Some wanted to reject the request, to ignore the humans. But the Vosian convinced them that they had to listen. A new power had emerged in the galaxy. It was better to understand them than to fear them in darkness. Hayes was well enough to travel within a week. The medical chamber had done its work. His bones had healed. His burns were covered with new skin. He was weak, but he was alive. Emma helped him stand, helped him walk, helped him prepare for the journey to the council. Captain Stone, Captain Walker, and several other human officers accompanied Hayes and Emma to the council chamber. They traveled in a small ship, following the route that Kalos provided. The chamber hung in space, vast and gray and ancient. As they approached, Emma looked at her father. His uniform was clean. His eyes were sharp despite his injuries. He looked like a soldier. He looked like a leader. "Are you afraid?" she asked. "Yes," Hayes said. "But fear does not stop us from doing what is right. Fear is just part of the cost." They entered the great chamber. The 7 council leaders looked down at them from their places around the circular table. For a moment, there was silence. Then the Vosian stood up. "So," he said, looking at Hayes, "humanity lives." "Humanity lives," Hayes agreed. "And we have come to tell you what that means." Hayes stepped forward. He did not take a seat. He stood in the center of the chamber and spoke directly to the council. His voice was clear and strong, despite his weakness. "For 500 years we hid," he said. "We believed the galaxy was too dangerous for us. We thought that if we stayed quiet and small, we would be safe. But safety without purpose is not living. We have come out of hiding because there are people who need protection. The Therans needed us, and we came. That is what humans do. We protect those who cannot protect themselves." Commander Vex of the Krell stood up, angry. "You attacked my fleet. You destroyed my ships. This is an act of war." "No," Hayes said. "This was an act of defense. Your fleet attacked the Therans, who have never harmed anyone. We defended them. If you call that an act of war, then yes, we committed war. We did it with purpose, and we did it with honor." The chamber was silent. Hayes continued. "I know we are not strong like the Krell. I know we do not have technology like the Zilorians. I know we are young compared to the Vosian. But we have something else. We have the will to fight for others. We have the ability to sacrifice. We have the power of working together towards something greater than ourselves. That is why we won." The other council members whispered among themselves. Some looked angry. Some looked impressed. Some looked afraid. Lyra of the Therans stood up. "The Therans support the humans. They came to save our people when they risked everything. We offer them a place among the free species of the galaxy." Other voices joined her. The Zilorians offered support. Even some of the smaller, younger species offered their backing. The council was dividing, but it was not breaking. Humanity had shown that they could be trusted. Finally, The Vosian raised his hand for silence. He looked directly at Hayes. "You will have your place," the Vosian said. "But know this, human captain. With your place in this galaxy comes responsibility. You have shown that you are strong. Now you must show that you are wise. Power without wisdom leads only to destruction." Hayes bowed his head. "I understand. We will try to be worthy of your trust." As they left the council chamber, Emma walked beside her father. She looked back at the great space station, at the 7 leaders watching them leave. What happens now? She asked. Hayes looked at his daughter and then at the stars beyond. "Now," he said, "humanity builds its future. We establish an alliance with the Therans. We prepare our defenses. We learn to live in the galaxy as ourselves, not as ghosts. We show the universe what it means to be human." The human delegation returned to their ships. Behind them, the Void Council continued to debate. Before them, the galaxy stretched out, vast and dangerous and full of possibility. And somewhere in the distance, on a world called Sanctuary, people were watching the stars, knowing that their children would not hide there forever. Humanity had taken its first step back into the light. There would be many more steps to come. There would be trials and challenges and wars that were not yet fought. But now, when those challenges came, humanity would face them. Humanity would stand beside those who needed them. Humanity would fight for what was right. The age of hiding was over. The age of standing had begun.